Ambassador Zethkar's mandibles clicked in what his species considered polite amusement as he examined the primitive projectile weapon the human delegation had presented to the Galactic Council. The crude metal tube, barely a meter in length, seemed almost comically inadequate compared to the elegant plasma rifles and quantum disruptors that civilized species wielded. "This is your species' primary military technology?" Zethkar inquired, his four eyes blinking in sequence. Around the circular chamber, representatives from dozens of advanced civilizations watched with barely concealed mirth. The Vorthak delegates' crystalline form chimed with harmonics that translated as laughter, while the gaseous Nathrani rippled with what could only be described as cosmic giggling. Captain Sarah Chen, representing the newly contacted human species, maintained her composure despite the obvious mockery. Her weathered hands remained steady as she held what the humans called a rifle, a term that the universal translator struggled to convey meaningfully to species that had moved beyond kinetic warfare millennia ago. "One of several," Chen replied evenly. "We brought this as a demonstration model." Counselor Vexithera of the hegemony leaned forward, her serpentine neck extending with curiosity. "Tell us, human, how does this device function? Our scientists are fascinated by such primitive technology." Chen's smile was thin but polite. "It accelerates a small metal projectile using controlled chemical explosion. The projectile travels at approximately 900 meters per second." The chamber erupted in what could generously be called diplomatic laughter. Admiral Crexton of the Dominion Navy, whose people had been waging interstellar warfare for 10,000 years, shook his massive head. 900 meters per second? Our sidearms fire coherent energy beams at light speed. Surely this is some form of historical curiosity rather than actual military equipment? "We understand your skepticism," Chen said, her voice carrying undertones that the more perceptive delegates recognized as something far more dangerous than embarrassment. "Perhaps a demonstration would be instructive." Zethkar's mandibles spread wider. "By all means. Our testing range can accommodate any energetic display your primitive technology might produce." The Galactic Council's testing facility orbited a dead system, its massive holographic displays and sensor arrays designed to analyze the most sophisticated weapons known to galactic civilization. When the human vessel, a comparatively tiny frigate called the Chicago, took position at the designated coordinates, the assembled delegates settled in for what they assumed would be a mildly entertaining display of chemical combustion. Chen stood before the observation deck's main viewer, her hands clasped behind her back as she spoke into her communication device. "This is Ambassador Chen to Captain Rodriguez. You are authorized to demonstrate Package Alpha." On the screen, the human frigate seemed to undergo a subtle transformation. What the aliens had dismissed as primitive sensor arrays along the ship's hull began to extend and reconfigure. The vessel's central superstructure opened like a blooming flower, revealing something that made several delegates pause their conversations. "What?" Vexithara asked slowly. "Is that?" The object emerging from the human ship defied easy categorization. It was clearly a weapon. That much was obvious from its purposeful design. But its scale was unprecedented. Nearly a kilometer in length, the barrel appeared to be constructed from some form of exotic matter that bent light around its edges. Strange geometric patterns covered its surface, and energy readings that shouldn't have been possible emanated from its core. "That," Chen said with quiet pride, "is what we call the relativistic kinetic bombardment system, or as the crew likes to call it, Big Bertha." Admiral Crexton's confidence wavered slightly. "The energy readings, they're off our scales. What power source could possibly—" "Oh, we're not using exotic energy," Chen interrupted pleasantly. "It's still a kinetic weapon, still just accelerating a metal projectile. We've simply scaled up the concept." The targeting display showed the weapon's intended destination, a barren moon in the system's outer ring. Roughly the size of Earth's Luna, it served as the testing range's primary target for weapons that might pose environmental hazards. "Beginning charge sequence," came the voice from the Chicago. The weapon's geometric patterns began to glow with increasing intensity, and space itself seemed to ripple around the massive barrel. Zethkar's amusement had completely evaporated. The gravitational distortions. What exactly are you accelerating? Chen's smile grew broader. A tungsten rod, about the size of a telephone pole. We're accelerating it to roughly 15% of light speed. The chamber fell silent except for the hum of translation devices working overtime to convey concepts that most languages lacked words for. Firing, announced the human captain. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then the sensors registered something that broke several laws of physics that the Galactic Council had considered inviolate. A streak of twisted space-time erupted from the human weapon, crossing the distance to the target moon in less than 3 seconds. The moon didn't explode in the traditional sense. Instead, it simply ceased. The tungsten projectile, carrying the kinetic energy of a small star, struck the celestial body and instantly converted both projectile and target into exotic plasma expanding at a significant fraction of light speed. Where a moon had been, now there was only an expanding sphere of superheated matter that would have been visible from several star systems away. The silence in the observation chamber stretched for long minutes. Finally, Counselor Vexithara found her voice. That was a moon. Yes, Chen agreed cheerfully. We considered demonstrating our antimatter warheads, but we thought that might be considered showing off. Admiral Crexton's tactical mind had already begun processing the implications. The manufacturing requirements alone, the energy infrastructure necessary to power such a weapon. Oh, that's not our biggest gun, Chen mentioned casually. That's just what we could fit on a frigate. Our dreadnoughts carry the really interesting ordnance. Zethkar's mandibles had stopped clicking entirely. You said this was one of several technologies? Chen nodded toward the dissipating cloud of what had once been a moon. Humans have a saying, Ambassador. When all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. We've spent our entire history perfecting that hammer. She paused, watching the odd expressions of beings who had thought themselves the pinnacle of military evolution. We just made really, really big hammers. The formal diplomatic discussions that followed lasted for days, but the essential negotiations had been concluded in those first 3 seconds after the human demonstration. The Galactic Council extended full membership to humanity within the week, along with a mutual defense pact and most favored trading status. Nobody laughed at human weapons anymore. As Chen prepared to depart the council station, Zethkar approached her privately. I must ask, he said, his voice carrying genuine curiosity rather than mockery. What drives a species to develop such enthusiastic approaches to warfare? Chen considered the question seriously. Millions of years ago, we were prey animals on a world full of things with bigger teeth and claws. We learned that if you can't be the biggest predator, you'd better be the smartest. And if you can't be the smartest. She gestured toward the view screen, where the expanding plasma cloud still glowed against the stars. You'd better have the biggest stick. Zethkar's species had evolved from apex predators on a world with few natural threats. The concept of prey animals developing such devastating military capabilities was both fascinating and terrifying. And your people? He asked. They support this level of military development? Chen's laugh held no humor. Ambassador, every human child learns a simple lesson. We are very small and the universe is very large and very hostile. But we've learned something that bigger, stronger species sometimes forget. Which is, that size isn't everything. Sometimes all you need is the right leverage point and enough force applied in exactly the right place. She looked out at the stars with the expression of someone who had seen too much of the galaxy's casual cruelty. We may be the newcomers here, but we're nobody's prey. Not anymore. As humanity took its place among the galactic powers, one fact became clear to all who had witnessed that demonstration. Earth's children had indeed learned to carry very big sticks, and they had excellent aim.